Hi everyone, this is Raymond Wood at the Raymond Wood podcast. Now hopefully I get this right. So Emily, how do I pronounce your last name? Because I'm hopeless with
Geilnik.
Geilnik, it is
Yeah.
Geilnik. I was saying to Maya off stage this morning, it's really funny how people say names differently, and I heard your name said 3 different ways on interviews.
I get Geilnik, Geilnik.
So it's Emily Geilnik.
Yeah,
I'm so glad it's Emily Geilnik.
With the English accent, it sounds even better.
Now, Emily, most people will know who's watching our podcast. We've got a lot of families who've got daughters and sons, and they'll know you being a football player, being a Matilda, ex-Liverpool, thank God, because I love Liverpool. Bayern Munich, Aston Villa. I've got an affinity with Aston Villa as well. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I first want to touch on how and when and why did you first start playing football?
Competition.
Okay.
I'm obsessed with competition. To be honest, I didn't grow up with any talent, any skill, any tricks. Didn't have coaches, and I preach this all the time. I just had this hunger for competition. Yeah. I, number one, wanted to beat the boys when I was in school. I wanted to be better than everyone else, but I was obsessed with development, and I still am, which is crazy. And, you know, that's why I always stress to people that it's like the Leo Messi, right? Like, he always does the basics over and over again because there's no ceiling for him. He's just obsessed with improvement and develop. You can never do the basics enough, and I still live and breathe by that. And since I was a young kid, I taught myself and I developed myself into becoming a pro, but it didn't happen overnight. So I'm just obsessed with competition and development. And like I'm 32 now, and I still am. I'm still not satisfied with what I've achieved, and I still know I've got so much more growth.
It's funny. I say it as soon as you walked in the room before, and people always say to me, Ray, you've coached for over 25 years. What's the one thing you look for? It's exactly that energy you're giving off. Like, I had 2 boys at the time at Leicester City, Luke Thomas and Harvey Barnes, and they had that same motivation. When they come in, they weren't the best. Luke didn't have a left foot, and he turned out to be one of the best left footers in the game. Yep. And it's like those 2 boys are still striving in their game, and it's that energy, that motivation, and that's what I do in my book, and we'll talk about it in a bit, the Pro Player Pathway. It's like talent is most definitely made. It's not born. Like, if you're going to be 5 foot tall, there's a chance you're never going to be an NBA basketball star. Yeah. We get that. But if you get 99% of what you need physically, anyone can make themselves into anything. And you obviously believe that as well.
I
with
believe
the right
it.
amount of work.
I actually had an interesting encounter, which is good to share. When I was at Villa, I ran into a coach, and I remember him telling me this story. He used to private train Phil Foden. Yeah. And he used to say to me, at the end of one of Phil Foden's games, he won player of the match. And he had 2 players that he trained, and the difference between the other player is the other player messaged the coach and said, I won player of the match, how good? When Phil won player of the match, he messaged the guy that's been training him and said, player of the match doesn't matter for me because I made a mistake here, here, and here. Yeah. So, it's just this different mindset, and I feel like there's a rare breed of people who still have it to this day. And, like, if you use Phil as an example, he's at the top of his game. Like, he's going places. Yeah. He embodies what every young aspiring male footballer wants to be. They want to be Phil Foden or play like him and be like him. And so for him to still have that mindset, I feel like I related so much to that because that is still me to this day. I'm obsessed with perfection, and I'm grateful that I'm never going to achieve it. Yeah. Which is exciting because that means there's no ceiling. Yeah. I'm always looking for improvement.
I love that analogy of Phil Foden. I actually worked on a project called the EPPP in the Premier League, and players like Phil Foden, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Jude Bellingham, we worked with all these players, and what we'd done was we'd done a big research study for the Premier League to see why we weren't producing enough world-class players. And the findings that we got was 1,600 pages of data, but the main finding was we weren't doing enough repetition. And what we found was when you put enough repetition in place, players become that critical, like you just said, they will pick out the smallest things they've done wrong. They're not interested in what they've done right. They expect that as a minimum, but it's the little things that they're getting wrong, and that's the
standards. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Well, I think, you know, without pointing out the generation these days, is everyone wants something for nothing. People just, you know, they expect to be in the green and gold jersey. They expect to be a starting 11, but they're not obsessed with these small details. They just think they've done enough. And I think complacency is the scariest thing as athletes. You can never be complacent. You've always got to be obsessed with these 1% details, because otherwise you'll never become the Phil Fodens or the Messis or, you know. Yeah. So that's, I mean, I still live and breathe those same values. They're truly embedded in my mentality.
one of the things I really wanted to touch on, and we just spoke about it off camera, is about the change in women's football in the past 10 years. And I spoke about being a dad of 2 daughters. I'm like so excited about what's ahead for women's football. But it was funny, we just touched on Skelmersdale.
Yeah.
And it was like, I remember the days when Liverpool women and academy teams were training down in Skelmersdale. And anyone who knows Skelmersdale, it's an okay place. But
it's rough, yeah.
It can have similarities to certain places.
You got to remember,
Brisbane.
this was my first time overseas at a professional contract, and I was in Skelmersdale, and it was tough.
So for you to see your days when you're talking about, you weren't allowed to play at Anfield, you had to train in Skelmersdale, so you see what the Liverpool women's team have got now. Do you get a little bit jealous of that, or are you actually happy it's moved towards that way and now women are finally getting what they deserve?
No jealousy. It's pure happiness. I'm proud. I'm a stepping stone for sure. I wish 10 years ago was where it is now, but I'm all a part of a stepping stone. I'm a part of that journey of women's progression. So like my first overseas contract, Liverpool. Trained twice a week. I remember begging the coach to private train with me in the park, like thick paddock grass. I was training an extra 2-3 times a week just with the coach. Crazy. He agreed to do it. Yeah. So I'm training twice a week with the girls. They're driving 2-3 hours a time for training. We're out the back in some field with hardly any lights. The under 12 boys at the time had a locker room, shower facilities. We had nothing. And, we're playing at Skem, so in the middle of nowhere, really. And I remember the record attendance we had was against Everton because it was a derby. We had 1,000, and I was like in awe. I'm like 1,000 people. Yeah. This is unreal, And that was going back then. And I saw the shift in women's football, and I was lucky enough to experience it. And I was there actually. I think it was at the Emirates, the Euros. Yeah. Was it at the Emirates? No, sorry, at the what's the main one in England?
At Wembley or
at Wembley? Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
No, you're right.
I'm getting. It's been a while, yeah. So I experienced, got to watch England win the Euros that year, and obviously the follow-on of that, playing at Aston Villa that season, it erupted. So not only did the stats of kids in school playing football, even though that we already assume they live and breathe football, but the attendance at our games, and what it did is it helped the pay go up. It improved the facilities. It got an injection of, financial support from independent sponsors. Like it just blew up, and it made these young kids dream. Because when I started playing football, I knew I had to have a job. I had to study. I mean, at one point I had 2 or 3 jobs, and we couldn't afford to pay for private coaches, and we couldn't afford to go to all these fancy clinics and stuff like that. And now you've got young kids that are going to school with a football. I'm glad I don't have to say soccer ball, because every other podcast I have to say soccer.
No, we say football on here.
Drives me mental. And they say rugby or AFL. I said no, the real football. So it's come leaps and bounds, and I witnessed that in England, so that was pretty special. But then what I witnessed in Australia with the Matildas, and unfortunately I ran out of time with an injury, so it was a really hard time for me to be on the sideline and not be lacing up the boots. But I witnessed for the first time, which was so strange. I was in the stadium watching the girls make history. Yeah. So I got to feel something that when you're a player, you're in the zone. It's wall white noise. But I got to feel, hear, just I was in the actual eruption in the time of watching Australia fall in love with the women's game and put the Matildas and women's football on the map. And so that was pretty surreal to witness. And then the statistics that have gone up in sport, in NPL, in club level, all these young girls I had a girl a couple months ago, and she happened to be the first future baller sign up, and she messaged me out of the blue and said, hey, I've never wanted to play football my whole life. And I've never even kicked a ball, but I'd love to be trained by you. Yeah. And because I loved watching the Matildas at the World Cup. Yeah. And she was unbelievable. And this is what I'm talking about. We've got so much talent sitting on the sideline who aren't exposed to women's football, and who've never dreamt about it, because it was never really, I want to be a full-time professional footballer. Yeah. It wasn't really in the scope, because you knew you had to have 2 or 3 jobs and study, and you couldn't really rely. Whereas now you can kind of throw all your eggs in one basket and try and become a pro footballer. And when I say I coached this girl and she could kick, she had a touch, and to tell me she's never played football before,
scary.
We've got talent out there. And now these girls are so inspired. They want to be Matildas. They want to play professional football. So it just opens up so many doors, and it's just inspired a nation, and it's inspired these young girls. So it's incredible.
It's so exciting. Just, yeah, we take a lot of players back from Australia to the UK. And one of the scary things is when we take these young boys and girls across, they can not only match them when they're younger, but they're better than them. It's only when they get to 13, 14, that's where we see that drop off, unfortunately. And we'll touch on this a little bit later on. But it's so exciting to see, like, even my youngest girl, like, my eldest girl got pushed into tennis a bit by me, and I admit that because I didn't want her to play football because my whole life was football and I felt like it was too much. But then, like, my youngest one just decided after a chance meeting with Sam Kerr at the airport last year that she's like, she's 10, she's been a gymnast her whole life, and she's like, Dad, I want to be a football player now, like Sam Kerr, I want to be a Matilda. And I'm like, this is good because she's decided it. Now she trains 3-4 times a week. She plays 2 games of a weekend. Cool. And I'm watching her, and her team, she plays at a private academy called the Football Company. And they put their girls' teams in boys' community competition. So they play against boys. And most weekends they're losing 4-1, 4-2, but they're getting a challenge. Yeah. And to watch her at the weekend taking 2 boys on and then set up, and I'm like, a year ago she couldn't even kick a ball. Wasn't
even interested. So
how many future Matildas are we missing out on because we're not giving them the opportunity?
Oh.
And it's scary. Now, one of the big things I wanted to touch on, and we'll talk about it, was future ballers and what it is and where it come from. And I haven't even researched it too much purposely because I wanted to hear it first hand from you.
What's your daughter's name?
Paloma.
Yeah. Okay. So what I would say back to that, and this is a reason I'll reflect on your daughter, is because it's exactly why we're starting Future Baller. So she then said, I met Sam Kerr and I want to become a Matilda and I want to be just like Sam Kerr. Yeah. We want Paloma to become, say, I'm going to be the next Paloma. Yeah. She is the next. She doesn't need to be the next Sam Kerr. Yeah. She's the future. Yeah. And we want this Future Baller Clinic is to showcase and inspire and build confidence in these young girls that you can be the next Paloma. Yeah. You can be the next. You don't have to want to be the next Caitlin Ford, the next. You can be the future. And like, when I grew up, I was pretty resilient, right? But I had coaches who didn't believe in me. I had people who say I'd never make it, and I didn't make it through the pathway. So I have a very interesting story. But, I believed in myself, and not all these young girls can really gain that self-confidence because they've got too many other factors that are putting them down. So this Future Baller Clinic is all about not only becoming good people, but the desire to become good players and believing that they can get to the top, because a lot of it is just belief. Yep. Some of these players are so talented, but they don't believe they'll ever get there. I never thought I would get an A-League contract. I got one. I never thought I would play for Young Matildas. I got one, scored a hat-trick on my debut. And then certainly didn't think I'd be a Matilda 11 years later. Yeah. And for 11 whole years, because it's so hard to get there and even harder to stay there. And I always preach that. But it's all about having these beliefs. And once you get there, it's like, okay, I've got that clarity. Yeah, I actually can do this. And then what's next? And then what's next? So this Future Baller Clinic is, Chloe and I want to showcase our journey, that it hasn't been like this. Yeah. It's been like this and a lot of these, but without these low points, they're the biggest learnings, because if you have just a trajectory of always going up, you'll never achieve greatness. No. It's just impossible. You need to have setbacks and you need to have failures, because that's how you grow. So we want these girls, and most importantly, we want these parents to listen and hear that your girls are going through exactly what we would have gone through, and it's not all smooth sailing, and it is hard to get there, and it is really hard to stay there, but it's possible. Yeah. Because a lot of time these young girls don't believe in themselves, and the parents do, but trying to find that translation so they can both hear it and they can both realize that this success story hasn't always been successful. Yeah. It seems like that from an outside perspective, and that's why really important. A lot of the Matildas are coming out with their journeys and their experiences, because they haven't always just had the glitz and glamour. Like, they didn't just, their lives changed at the World Cup. But what about the 10 years of hell and sacrifice it's taken to get there? Everyone forgets the struggles and the tribulations and the lows and the almost quitting and the giving up, all those things it's taken to get to this pinnacle World Cup, which was life-changing for so many people. People don't see it. No. And, I think everyone thinks that there's so many people, especially around the ages now, the older girls, that think they can become Matildas. that's one really good thing. But then I think once people come into camp, they realise that there's just a level here.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is strip that right back and prepare them for when they get that opportunity to come into camp and to be Matildas, they're there because they know what to expect. They know the standard, and hopefully we can instill our values and philosophies in these young girls, not only to build confidence and belief, but to get them to thinking a certain level and a certain standard that enough is never enough.
Yeah.
And you've always got to have high standards. So we want to be a representation of that. And Chloe and I really embody everything that we are showcasing in this clinic. And it's not just, I hate calling it a clinic.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it a clinic.
Sounds very American.
It's not. It's not a clinic. It's not some like fun. I mean, it's going to be fun to a degree because, you know, it's an element of that age. But what we're delivering there is something I never had as a kid, and it's something I could have dreamed of, being coached by Matildas and some of the best coaches, and that can give me the tools to, you know, to reach further than what I ever thought or believed in. And so that's really trying to keep it short because I'm so passionate about it. But that's really what it is, just instilling belief and confidence in these young girls to strive.
It's funny you say that. Like, one of the things that I'd done going back to my eldest daughter, who said as a tennis player, I'd done it to prove a point with her when she was 9 and 10, but I just purely put her through repetition. Mm-hmm. I went against the coach's guidelines for technically how we develop it as a player, how we develop strokes, and I wanted to prove a point that just through repetition was enough to make it. She won state titles, she won national titles, she was the first female to win an under 10 mixed competition nationally, and didn't just win it, she hammered everyone. Mm-hmm. So I gave her that example. So now she's 15 looking back to prove a point that you can do it just on repetition alone. Yep. But if you put everything else on, it's a bonus. And she's just come from being 2 years out of competition because it's very political and hard in tennis, in the tennis world. And I said, you don't need to be playing comps when you're 13, 14. You just need to train. She's just gone back into comps. She played nationals. She won a final, a consolation final. She played in the first women's competition at the weekend. And the point I'm trying to get to with this is she played against a girl who she beat in juniors really easy, and she lost 6-1, 6-2. So I said, look, you've got to reflect this way. Let's have a little look. Most of your games went to deuce, but let's have a look. So she looked at the other player. She looked at her. This other player's played 62 competitive matches this year. My daughter's played 3. I said, do you honestly believe what my belief is talent's made, not born? Do you think you had a right to beat her because you've only played 3 competitive matches? She's like, oh, no, Dad. And I said, exactly. I said, so in a year's time, once you've got 80 matches under your belt, when you play it again, what's going to happen? And she's like, I'll probably beat it. I said, exactly. And that's what I don't think mums and dads and players do. They don't reflect enough that way. They just don't get the success there and then, and they drop out. And I think my girls are very lucky because of my background, and this is what I'm trying to do through the podcast, through the social media reels we do, through the professional player pathway and the book we'll talk about. My whole life is not just about girls, but boys as well, but about mums and dads. Don't pull it too early when the roots are just grown underneath and it's about to come out, and then parents pull it away because they listen to naysayers who go, it's not possible. And to see your passion, you're never going to make it, and it kills me. And it's like, you will make it, and it's really super important. We're going to go to our first ad break, but we'll be back in a minute. I think this could go for 3 hours.
I know, we're probably going to have an ad break.
There's a guy in the US called Rich Roll, and he does a podcast, and his podcasts go for 3 hours.
Yeah,
and
I know Rich,
I could have done one with Lewis, and I think I could do one with you. But a big thank you for joining us. We'll be back in a few minutes, and enjoy this short ad break. Would you one day like to be a professional football player? Would you like to be part of our pro player pathway? What is the pro player pathway? It's an opportunity for all Australian football players aged between 10 and 23 who want to join us to become the next professional football player. On the pro player pathway, you get to join me and my team free of charge to an event all around Australia. When you join me, we're going to teach you the secrets of football in Europe. And one day, maybe, you could be gracing the Champions League final. Guys, over the next 12 months, we're going to be coming around all the major cities of Australia. And when we come around all the major cities, we're going to be running our free events everywhere we go. So guys, what have you got to lose? Nothing. It's a free event. It's for boys and girls aged 10 to 23. And I'm going to teach you the secrets of becoming a top European football player. Oh, and one final thing. We're going to be giving away 20 scholarships to join me on this program of a lifetime. Hey everyone, this is Raymond's Wood at the Raymond Wood Podcast. We're back with Emily. Now, we were just talking a little bit about and touching on future ballers. So to get it right, whether it's a clinic or a camp, it's about helping young girls and families understand that it is possible to make it as a football player. And maybe just to give them that first touch point of the first experience of playing football. Is this something that you're going to run? Is it like once a year? Is it every school holidays? What's the plans for future ballers? And I know looking at you, it's probably going to be like...
That's a great question. Initially, we wanted to do it as a one-off, a life-changing experience. Obviously, we're going to reevaluate. We've had some feedback that people would like it to be a yearly thing. We're going to reevaluate that once we do this clinic. As footballers, we don't have much time, so I'm yet to tell my coach that I'm going to miss pretty much a whole week of pre-season.
Good luck.
And he's actually English background, so I'm in a bit of a tough position there. And because the Olympics, I've been fortunate enough that now that I'm not there with this injury, I've had all this time to do stuff like this and to work on Future Baller and develop it. So yeah, that's a troubling question and a tough one to ask, but it's I would say it's the stepping stone to, and we're never going to give up trying to push women's football further and further. Like since that World Cup, what Chloe and I felt and the opportunity we saw, and it's not about, for people that know me, it's never been about making money. I'd rather be broke than not do something that I love. Yeah. So it's about keeping this game alive. We've gotten it so far. I want the next generation, that I just want them inspiring. Not if it's not about being a Matilda, I want them to be so inspired that they want to make a club team.
Yeah.
They want to make an NPL. They want to make just a school football team, like whatever it is. Obviously the end goal is, we want them to strive to be a Matilda. Yeah. But I want them to just strive to go just one step further than what they think they're capable of. That's what it's all about.
And even maybe becoming a coach or becoming a physio, and just actually realising there's a lot of opportunities in the game.
That's right.
I knew growing up in Liverpool, football crazy family, all Liverpool and Everton fans. I got to 15 and I'm like, I'm nowhere near as good as any of my mates. And I started to piece it together, and I started to look, and I'm training once a week and I'm playing a game of a weekend because mum and dad were working 60-hour weeks. My mate was quite fortunate. We laugh about it, but his dad was on the dole on Centrelink, and he got to go training 4 or 5 times a week, and then he went on and played pro and played at a really high level. And I think sometimes your environment that you might think goes against you actually goes in your favour. But again, I seen it growing up, and I went down this mission where I'm like, well, I was never good enough to make it as a player, but could I become a coach? And then when I started going down my coaching journey, I'm like, actually, talent's made, it's not born. Actually, I'm like, people used to tell, my idols growing up were players like Ian Rush, John Barnes. Yep. And it was like, I used to see these guys walking around the streets of Liverpool and thinking, oh, they're so lucky to be born that way. Yeah. And then I realised...
that line kills me.
When I was a kid, because that's what I got taught by mum and dad. And everyone believed, it makes me laugh. We talk about Hollywood actors like Tom Cruise. Whether you hate him or love him, for me, he's one of the best actors ever, because you follow him and see how much he applies himself into his industry. He does all his own stunts, and it's like these guys like yourself go above and beyond to achieve what you want to do.
I just think, it's hard to talk about when you talk about yourself, but I'm living proof of talent hasn't got me here. Yeah. I still believe, sometimes I still have days where I feel like I'm not good enough, and then I'm in the green and gold jersey and I'm about to go on, or I'm starting a match and I'm still doubting myself. Like, these are normal habits, but all I know is I wouldn't have had the career I've had if I didn't do all these small things, if I didn't have consistency and routine. And for instance, training with Lewis, a couple times a week at the crack of dawn. I've been so fortunate to have all these people externally that because I'm so passionate and I had such a desire to get better, that also drove them to want to train me, for nothing. Yeah. Give up their time 2 hours, in the morning before I went to football training. And they're all the small things that helped me get these big contracts, that got me these overseas moves. I wouldn't have been a professional footballer if I didn't go out and train extra than everybody else. It's as black and white as that. I was obsessed with developing a left foot, obsessed with getting my touch better, because I was not born with this footballing talent. Yeah. Most of my goals were toe punts. Yeah. I told someone the other day I scored 60 goals one season for my first under-12s team, and they were all toe punts. You know, I didn't have step overs. I didn't have unreal coaches. I had no offense to the dads, but I had people's dads, coaching me. And, but the best thing I ever did was not only the extra coaching, the private one-on-one stuff. But I trained with the boys for as long as I could. It's a secret weapon. And, you know, people can argue it all day long, but what it did is it's sink or swim in that moment. It made me resilient. I trained and played with boys as much as I could. And once I was in the academy, we played boys every week, and it just made you better. It's not about then trying to beat the boys. It's just you knew that they were a level above.
Yeah.
Whether it's age, physique, technicality, they were just a level above.
Yeah.
So it made you rise to the occasion, and you pretty quickly you either went this way or you went this way. And I always thrived in uncomfortable positions. So yeah, that was a huge factor in the reason as to where I am today.
Yeah, it was funny. Like we were just talking before about my youngest daughter, and she's at the football company in Brisbane, and they strategically place all the girls' teams into community level boys competitions. And some of the comments you hear from parents is just like disgusting. Like, and I have to stand there and bite my tongue. I've got to be really, really careful. But you obviously went through probably a lot of this as yourself as well, growing up, and it still amazes me today in 2024, like some of the stuff that we hear. But going back to that point is like, it's so important. I know this, that girls play with boys as much as possible. Like even going back to my eldest girl, she's always hit with boys. She's got a male coach, a male hitting partner. She will never beat the male hitting partner ever in tennis. And for me, I love that because she's always guaranteed a challenge and training every day. And it's like with the boys, I say it openly, like the talented boys need to be playing up 2-3 age groups. But again, unfortunately, through FFA and regulation, all the rest of it, they have this age relative rule. They won't let them play up age groups. You've got to get a letter from the king signed before you can play up. And I'm like, guys, when are you going to get it? Like, seriously, the talented boys need to play up 2 to 3 age groups. The talented girls need to be with the boys.
It's how they progress.
That's how you're going to progress. So you're obviously on the same line of thinking with that.
Definitely. Yep. I can't say how strong I am on that. And still to this day, I'll still do it. Like I, so 2 pre-seasons ago, an off season, I had finished up at Villa and I came straight back here and I trained with an NPL men's side who were like between the ages of 20 and 30. Yeah. And they, I'm credible, they respect me, but they don't take it easy on me. And I wouldn't want that. No. I'm like, stay at your level, and I want to fight every single training to just be at your standard, at your level. And that's what I love. And that's something rewarding about being in a male-dominant environment. As a female, you've either got to hold your own or you get left behind. Yeah. And like I'm saying that women's football, the level has gotten stronger now. But in times where like you're preparing for a major tournament, you might just need to throw yourself in that environment because it will progress you. Like it's the speed of progression, right? Yeah. You'll just get there that much quicker. Yeah. And you're constantly challenged. You can't afford to have one bad touch or not make one run or track back one runner. Where in women's football, sometimes if you go into an NPL situation, you can get away with those small things. Yeah. But in men's football, you can't.
You're not going to get away from it.
And then, you wanna make sure that coach wants to have you back again next season for a bit of training, because if you can't handle it now, you won't, you're
not going to do it next year.
That's right, yeah.
Just in regards to pathway, you touched on a little bit, and it's really interesting because it's the book that I've wrote, Professional Player Pathway, and it's about whether you're a boy or girl. And my belief is we don't really have a pathway in Australia. And a lot of people have a go at me for it, and I don't say it with a bad intention. It's like there's no real proper pathway. If you're a boy or a girl and you want your son or daughter to make it, there's nothing on a website that goes you should do A to Z to follow it. So you touched on your pathway and you said it was a very different pathway. And one of the controversial things I always say is, like, a lot of people say, well, yeah, Socceroos go good, but the Matildas are amazing. And I'm like, they are, but most of the Matildas are developed in Europe. Like, they don't stay here till they're 18. They go a lot early. So talk to me about your pathway and what was the pathway?
Yeah, so I had all of my friends at the time when I was playing like rep football, right, and trying to make that the schoolgirls Australian team. I had a few rolled ankles and just some really unfortunate luck at the time that all of my friends were surpassing. And, I was much younger than, I think, 13 or 14. I actually took a year off football I just couldn't even believe I did it. So I took a step back, came back in, and I went on a school trip to Canberra, which is the IAS. Yeah. Matilda's happened to be training there. So you can imagine me as a young 14, 15-year-old. I'm like, what? This is crazy. Like, I'm idolizing these girls. Like, I want to be a Matilda one day, not knowing that I would ever get there. And my school teacher at the time believed in me so much, and honestly, more than I believed in myself. He went up to the head coach at that time, who was Tom Samani, and said, so I've got this girl, which is just crazy that he's even asking head coach, can she have a crack? Can you give her a run tomorrow in training? And he came back and said yes. Had no idea who
Amazing.
I was.
Who was your teacher?
Yeah, Ross Page. Yeah,
Okay.
knew nothing about me. But all my sports teachers were huge believers of me throughout, and they saw a talent, I guess, or a potential that I didn't know I quite had. So I trained with the Matildas, and in that moment, it's like you're either up to the task or you're not. Had the training of my life. Tom Samani gets in touch with my teacher. Hey, can she come back? We've got an internal game against boys tomorrow. Does she want to have a run? So my school's sitting around the field watching me. I'm playing with the Matildas. 15-year-old. Never had an opportunity. Never made it past rep. All my friends were to the QAS program and playing in the academy there, which was essentially the stepping stone to an A-League contract for Brisbane Roar. And he gets on the phone the next day, calls up Jeff Hopkins, who was my Melbourne Victory coach, but Brisbane Roar coach at the time, and said, I've got this girl. You've got to get her into your academy. And the years before, I'd never received a letter to go to this academy, which was the stepping stone for the next contract. And spent the half a year in the academy, got my first contract with Brisbane Roar. So then I'm thinking, okay, maybe I've got something here. Like, I've got a lot to work on. I'm not technically quite there, but I know I've got a burning desire, and I've just trained with the Matildas. Like, it's crazy. But that moment could have been easily lost for me in that moment. If I didn't have this desire, and if I didn't know that that's what I wanted to do, and if I didn't step up to that level, that opportunity's gone.
Yeah.
So I get my first Brisbane Roar contract, played for Roar for 9 seasons, got a young Matildas call up, scored a hat-trick on debut, which was just insane because we were losing 3-0 and came back and won 4-3.
Phenomenal.
And then I'm thinking, can I play for the Matildas? Can I go one more? And then got my call up and been in there for 11 years now. And, it wasn't necessarily, and like you said, there isn't really a pathway, but at that time it was like, can you just get yourself into the Academy of Sport with the QAS? And then it was just, can you get an A-League contract? But there was never any set in stone of like, this is how these young girls can do it. You go here, and then through that pathway you get into here. And the reason why so much talent was wasted at that point in time is because families' financial position, they couldn't go to these rep school games or these rep games, and that was a big part of why it wasn't successful, and why we were missing out on this massive pool of talent, because some of these young talented girls were their families weren't in financial position to pay, because it was a lot of money back then. Like, I'm so grateful that my family could drive me 4 hours to Coffs Harbour to do this tournament. And that's how you would make the state team and the national team. But families didn't have access to that kind of money back then.
We've got families now, and they're on our program on the Pro Player Pathway, and there's girls in there, and they're paying like $3,000-4,000 every time they go on this national ID camp for QAS, and it's like, we've got to get better at it.
Yeah.
Like, we give away, just on our program alone last year, I think we give away in excess of $1 million worth of scholarships. I'm like, I'm a one-man band.
Yeah.
I was driving Uber 3 years ago. So if I've worked out a way, how can the FFA and the state federations not work it out? And I think we've got to try and get better, rather than people badgering, and we've got to get there and go, look, we've got the answers for you. Like, one of the big things we do is actually how to identify talent. I know you've probably seen this many times yourself, but you go to a selection trial, you get a bid put on with a number on, you go and play in a game, and it's so subjective. Yeah, it's the most subjective, opinionated thing I've ever seen in my life. I was very fortunate. I worked at PSG, and Ancelotti was there at the time, and they had this thing just before all the money come in, and they used to have an open trial, and this open trial was anyone in the men's game who was coming off a professional contract could come for a trial for a week. The problem they had was they'd get 700-800 players off them. So in day one, they'd done this objective test, and it was a series of 6 tests, and it wasn't anything that reinvented the wheel. It was a beep test. It was, could you juggle the ball to 100? It was some really simple stuff. But what we done was we ruled 90% of them out from day one, and it gave them a test score. And I think that's what we need to be doing, is we need to look at some of these girls and go, it's a free event. All our events we do are free. And it costs us 50-60 grand to run every event, but we've found a way to do it. We run an event, we do objective testing, we give them a test score, but also it's not about telling them what they're rubbish at. It's actually telling them what they're not good at, what they are good at, and how they can get better. And we do all that for free. So what we're trying to do is influence the federations and the state governments and people who are running footballers to say, you can do this test. And if we identify Emily as a 12-year-old who's definitely better than anything we've got, we need to find a way, if they can't afford it financially, how we get her to be in the squad, because shouldn't it be about talent?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be about money. And that's what we're trying to do, is influence. So similar to you with Future Ballers, that's what we've tried to do with our programme. We're trying to influence like the federations and the Football Association.
That's unreal. Like, I mean, yours is on a much larger scale, but I know that if I had access to something like this when I was younger, all I think is like, I know I got to where I wanted to, but I got there slowly, and I kind of got there on my own, right?
Yeah.
Imagine how good these players could be if they have a setup and a platform that you're offering, and just how much quicker they can excel, and and it's about growing the game, right?
Yeah.
Like the talent right now at international football is like just excelling, like it's going through the roof. But with this next generation, if they can be a part of a proper pathway, how much we're going to grow this game. Like, we're just going to keep selling out stadiums, and that's essentially what we want to do. I'd hate to see this game die off.
Oh, it's so hard to see. And it's like, I had a parent come to me about 2.5 years ago, and I seen this young girl, and she was 10 at the time. And I could see she was probably one of the best girls I've seen. But tactically and physically, she struggles a bit.
Yeah.
And I said to the dad, look, I think I can help you. And he goes, oh, no, we're right. She's been selected by QAS and blah, blah. And this dad's just put up a brick wall. And I was so adamant, and I'm very intuitive. And I said, look, I'm going to have to grab hold of you and tell you who I am. So I don't like doing it, but I said, look, I've worked for the Premier League. I've worked for Liverpool, Leicester City, PSG. I said, trust me, you need to listen to me.
Yeah.
Trust me, you need to bring it in, and I'm going to show you something. So I showed them something, and I said, look, we've got this new programme we're starting called the Pro Player Pathway, and I need you to get your daughter on it with me. It doesn't affect the club football. It doesn't affect QAS and that. I said, but you need to follow this. He got told by about 6 people who said they knew me, and they didn't know me, but they just hear things and said that Ray's not a good guy. He's not here to help you. Story short, rolled 2.5 years on later. Thankfully, the dad listened to me. She went through the programme. She's now signed for Liverpool. For my eyes, she's going to go on and probably be the next Liverpool captain.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, she's probably going to be the next England captain and not the Matildas, because without going into too much of it, the dad just felt like they weren't supported enough in Australia. And she's an Australian-born kid, but she's got access to British passport. And I'm like,
and
she should be a Matilda.
That's what's so frustrating. I've heard several of these stories where people are tossing up between 2 different countries, and we've lost so much talent because of exactly this. We don't have these foundations.
Yeah.
But no, everything you're saying is bang on. Like, I have no argument there. There's such a lack of it, and we're still just trying to bridge the gap. And there's a reason why, also going back to your other point, there's a reason why a lot of us are going to Europe, because the gap is still so far, right?
Yeah.
We still don't have the professional standards, the financing, the level. Like, why aren't European players wanting to come and play in Australia?
Yeah.
Like, we're still so far apart. There's a reason why all of the Matildas are going and playing in the WSL, the NWSL, for Lyon, for all of these big clubs, Bayern Munich, because the level and the standards and the support and the pathway and what they offer compared to what Australia has on offer, it's chalk and cheese. So it's like it's an easy decision if you want to get to where you want.
I took this particular player back over a year ago to England. And they were very fortunate that mum and dad were moving to England for job and personal reasons. But I said, look, I can definitely help you and open up an opportunity. And they said, so if and when she signs for a team, like whether it be Liverpool or Man United, she had a few clubs looking at her, what's it going to cost us? And I went, nothing. It's free. And they're like, what? And they're like, we pay private academy $6,000 a year.
Yeah, it's
We're paying
crazy.
private coaching. We're paying QAS. Like, every time we go anywhere with QAS, it costs us $3,000. So we're up for like $15,000 a year. So we're not going to pay anything. So she's gone on to sign for Liverpool, and the mum and dad are like, Ray, we can't believe we're not paying anything. And why should you pay? Because that's the European thing. If you're good enough and you've invested a lot of time in your daughter or son's game, it should be free.
And before you know it, they'll be paying you to be there. See, another thing, you touched on the QS program, and it's hard to comment it, but what I will say is, when you get offered to come in one of these programs, you kind of lose what the reason why you got brought in there. You lose yourself. You can't express yourself. You're a part of then essentially is the coaching playbook.
Yeah.
You start playing a certain way and you get put into this box. So that is the one downfall you have with going into these academies through these pathways is you lose everything you were to fit into their mold.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't see like the Phil Fodens, they're not cookie cutter.
No.
They're just not.
No.
And they go and play for England because they can express themselves. They go and play for Chelsea or Man City and whatever it is because they can still express. They're not put in this mold.
Yeah.
And too many kids these days from a young age are all of a sudden in this robotic repetition of what the coach's philosophy is at the time, and it's just to fit a system.
Yeah.
And that's why we're just expected to fit into the system, and the longer you can listen and abide by those rules and laws, you'll stay in that system, but you will never develop.
No, we're not developing individuals.
Yeah.
And again, I say it from a background. I don't claim to know everything, but I think I know a lot more than most in the country. And I'm like, I've offered my services now. I'm in a position where I've said and I've reached out, I would happily help and advise FFA. I would help QAS. And I'm not here to sit and knock QAS and FFA. I get it. It's hard.
Yeah.
The problem is the numbers are that huge. Now, it's the biggest played sport in the country at like community-based level. I think it outdoes netball by 150,000 now.
Wow.
But I think that's the big problem. It's the success in how many people are playing it. But we need to start developing individuals creativity. And it's funny, like people say, Ray, you know, when you had like Harvey Barnes at Leicester, what were you doing with him? I said, we weren't reinventing the wheel. It was simple stuff. I'll tell you what we done. We give them one objective for 6 months. And your one objective is every time the ball's coming into you, you've got to scan both shoulders. And you follow that objective for the next 6 months. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. I said, you know, when we coached them, we didn't coach them. We used to put them in small-sided games and we had a deck of cards and we used to shuffle the cards and go, right, pick a card. And the cards would be one touch football for 3 minutes, go. That's what we're doing. There was no coaching.
I love simplicity.
And it was creativity and it was just letting them go. And that's what Phil Foden done. It's what Trent done. Jude Bellingham was with my friend, a guy called Christian Speakman. He was at Birmingham City, with all due respect. Probably one of the best players on the planet's been developed at Birmingham City. And that's not a knock at Birmingham City. But it was the project we worked on where we developed these 25 players. And every single player who was on the project, they've all played Premier League or La Liga. They've all won the Champions League and they've all won the Premier League. But I don't know anything. And it's like, trust me. It's
crazy.
Like,
it's honestly crazy because anytime I've ever coached, and it's hard with kids, right? Because you want to make things fun and people think you've got to have all these crazy cool drills and that's when you'll be good. It doesn't matter what drill. You can have all the craziest drills in the world and things that are fancy, but the player will never excel without the basics. And I still to this day you can never do the basics enough. Something just like dribbling through some cones without touching them with both feet. You know, and these days what's sad is kids find that stuff boring. And that's why we'll never get the Jude Bellinghams and the Phil Fodens, which is unfortunate. So I think you and I are on this planet Earth to try and to instill these foundations of what gets world-class players. And it's doing the simple things over and over again until it's clockwork. And that's when you can express yourself as an individual on the world stage, because these things are like second nature. It's like muscle memory. And then you can do the fancy stuff and, you know, be creative, but it's about these foundations, and I like live and breathe them. And that's what I want to instill, you know, in this future baller workshop, because it's less about what's fancy. It's more about the simple things that it takes to become a really, really great player and not a good player.
That's exactly what we do with our program, the Pro Player Pathway. We do a match analysis, but long story short, we draw out 5 objectives, and the 5 objectives are scanning, short distribution, long distribution, looking into space, and we actually prioritise them 1 to 5, and we go, right, for the next 6 months, all we want you to do with mum and dad now is record how many times you don't scan and how many times you do scan. And it's simplistic. And people go, this program's rubbish. And it's like, trust me, follow it.
Yeah, exactly.
It works. It produced Jude Bellingham. It produced Phil Foden. It produced Harvey Barnes. It will work if you follow it. It produced Lauren James.
Yeah. Like, do you know what? It's funny you say that, because when I played in England, everyone used to say, who's the hardest player you've ever played against? And every single national team player that's around me says Lauren James.
I'm telling you now.
She's just so talented.
Funny story. We met Sam Kerr in the airport, and my youngest daughter's run up to see Sam Kerr. And she knew a little bit from soccer, and she's like, do you want to get a picture with my dad? And she's like, what? And she's like, my dad, he's a famous coach from England. And I'm like, Plum, shut up. And it was so funny. And I'm like, no, she wants to get a picture with you. So we got a picture with Sam, and she was lovely. But I always say to everyone, and I mean this with the utmost respect, I love all the female players, but if you were to give me one choice to pick one female player and put it in a 1v1 against anyone, I would pick Lauren James.
She's world class.
See, for me, the biggest mistake England made in that World Cup final against Spain is they dropped her. They didn't start her. Because I know what happened, but for me, they cut the nose off to spite the face in that game. As soon as Lauren James come on, it was too late. It was 25 minutes to go. And Spain walked away with it again. But for me, Lauren James, and she's a product of the Triple P in the Premier League.
She's different level. And you know what's scary? I don't even think she's reached her full potential.
No.
She's unreal.
And with her older brother, he was identified early on in the piece. So she's learnt all these teachings. What he was following was they used to do 4 objectives in the Premier League, and they still do. With my programme, the Pro Player Pathway, to give the Aussies a leg up, we do 5 objectives. So very quick story about the girl we took back to Liverpool. I called Liverpool and I said, look, I've got a girl and you need to look at her. And they're like, look, we can't do that. And I said, no, look, she's moving back for personal reasons back to England. She's going to need a team. I know you're struggling against some of the bigger teams like Man United and attracting I said, I think you need to look at her. I told her a bit of a white lie and I said, she's 14. So they dropped it in the 16s.
Yeah.
She killed it.
Yeah.
But they went with a bit concerned about her height, whether she's going to have that troop. And I'm like, I'm a bit disappointed to hear that because that's something that I thought had gone out the English game. And they went, no, we just think, and then I said, well, I've told you a white lie. She's actually not 14. They're like, we knew she was 15. And I went, she's not 15, she's 12.
Wow.
And they've gone, what? And I'm like, she's 12. And like, she cut it up against the 16s.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just being able to create that opportunity and to get the kids there. And
that's fascinating. I love that story.
I went on a retreat about just under a year ago to Bali. And I thought
I'm going to one next week.
I thought going to a retreat in Bali, it was going to be all like just laying down, relaxing, and it wasn't.
No.
And what I actually discovered, I went with an amazing lady called Kathy DeMarcos, and she's based in Sydney, and she taught me about my purpose. And she said, Ray, you don't realise, like, you live in such an imposter syndrome. She said, you are here for a bigger purpose on this universe, and you're here to help the boys and girls understand that anything's possible with repetition. And you've got to get up and speak on stage. You've got to travel the world. And that's what I'm doing now. And it's like that whole week in Bali changed me. And I was the only guy with 11 women. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But I grew up with a mum, 6 aunties, heaps of females. So I was used to being around women, but it was such an eye-opening week. But to come away with actually really fully understanding what my purpose is. And for you to sit there and say as well, like, we're here on this planet for a reason. I believe we are. And we're here to try and help and educate the families and the mums and dads and the players to...
Absolutely. I'm starting to realise now that I'm getting towards the back end of my career that I have been put on this earth for a reason. And it wasn't just to play professional football. Like, I'm starting to turn more into a leadership role, putting my arm around players, inspiring young females to be better and pushing the girls who already think they should be starting in the starting 11, you know, bringing them down a peg. So I'm definitely finding more purpose. But, you know, it's funny, I kind of wish I wasn't 32 because I would love to, and I really genuinely mean this, I would love to do your pathway program because I'm still obsessed with those basics. When you say to me, like, just work on this for 6 months, like, that excites me.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not anywhere like, I just know that I've got way more potential and I just haven't unlocked it yet, and I don't like the phrase of like you're running out of time because I still feel great, and I've been unfortunate this last year and a half with injuries, but I'm still so obsessed with improvement that something like that would just like fire me up. Like when I used to go and do private training, they said today we're just going to learn chipping into that box, and in a 3x3 you've got to bring the ball down, and if we did that for half an hour, that doesn't bore me.
No.
I'm obsessed with repetition. So like, I feel like you and I were meant to meet for some reason because I love the basics and I can't, I've never really met like someone who's preached them as much as you. So that excites me. And I'm glad that we've still got people like you that are trying to bring this game to, I guess, like just strip it back down to the basics, because what we're trying, it does, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to get too fancy too quick, and we're missing the purpose.
Let's play 4-3-3. Let's play out from the back, and we're talking to 8-year-old girls who can't even hit a 5-meter pass, and it's like teach them basics. So our program to join it's $50,000 for a minimum of 4 years, but we keep the players on. For the longevity. That's if anyone's paying. We give away scholarships. We've given away full scholarships, like the girl who's at Liverpool now, we give her a full scholarship. Maya, who we spoke about before, she's on a scholarship with us. So we'll go in a room and we'll give away maybe 10 or 15 part scholarships. We might give away 1 or 2 full. So it just depends on where the players and the families are at. So we'll give you a full scholarship because I reckon, and it was really interesting. I'll tell you one more quick story. So I had a really sad story. I got a phone call from Liverpool Football Club from one of the coaches, and they've said, Ray, we've had a girl with us. She's been with us for 6 years, and the problem is that we've got to release her because, as you know, when they get into that senior, they can't take the whole squad of 16s in. Yep. They can only take maybe 2, maybe 3. Yep. And he said, we've had Amelie at the club for years, but unfortunately, we think she's going to go out of football. She's heartbroken. So Carla's called me and she's like, Ray, can you do anything? Because I think your programme would be perfect to give it a bit of an uplift. So I called up the mum and dad and I'm like, look, you don't know me. I know Carla's refit. I said, but we've got this programme. It's $50,000, but we'll give Amelie a scholarship. I said, because I don't want to see anyone go out of football. And if she's put 7, 8, 9 years of her work in, story short, we got her on the programme. We looked at her. I seen exactly straight away the one thing she wasn't doing in a game enough was scanning. We fixed scanning. Within 6 weeks, she decided not to give up football. She trialled at City, at Blackburn, a few other clubs. She chose Blackburn because she thought it was a better fit for many reasons. Family, she lives in St Helens, but also she got first team opportunity.
Playing time, yeah, it's crucial.
She then signs for Blackburn this year. She's then had her first England call-up. She was going to go out of football. Yeah. And only because I've created this programme and I've looked at the fundamental basics, and I know for a fact Liverpool are looking at it now going, we need to make a U-turn. Yeah. We've made a mess. We've missed something here. Yeah. I'm so grateful that like Liverpool could reach out to me and say, can you help us? Because like they don't know what to do because it must be hard on them as well. For sure. That you've got it. So look, how about we do you the deal? We'll do you the full scholarship. We'll get you on the programme. And even if it helps you in the latter end of your career, get 1% better, then maybe you can be one of our big advocates.
I'll squeeze it in between my season.
Yeah. One of the big things is you'll get to see when I walk you through, and it's all in the book, which I'll give you a copy, but it's an add-on to what you currently do. Nothing else changes. It's more about recording data and knowing what to practice. Yeah. And I'm a big believer in what you do at club and even at national level, that only makes up about 40% of what you need to do. The other 60% is going down the park and practicing certain things, but also understanding in your games what you should be looking to work on and get better at. And it's blew me away. Even going back to Europe, I speak to a lot of ex-colleagues and contacts at clubs. Even at Premier League level, they don't go to the level I go to with my programme. And we've had 21 players on the programme to date who've gone through it in its entirety, and all of them have signed pro scholarships. So we're at 100% strike rate at the moment, and I just want more people to have it. Hence why I wrote the book, so people can read it for the cost of like $50 or whatever it is for the book. They can read it and follow it and jump on the online program. So yeah, I'd love to give you a full scholarship. You'll be our oldest player on the program.
You know what? And I actually love that because I hope that this story reaches some people who are in a position that I am, because everyone would think from an outside perspective that I've made it and I've had this incredible career. Yes. Yeah. But I'm like I said, I still feel like I've got unlocked potential. I still don't believe I can count on my hand how many games I think I've like had great games. Yeah. And people will be like, you're crazy. You played amazing today. I said, no, I didn't. It wasn't enough. Yeah. And so I just think at my level, and even though I'm playing international football and playing at great clubs, I still want to get better. So hopefully there is elite level athletes out there and footballers that still don't think enough is enough and still want to go back to the basics and do more and get better.
And our biggest problem is as girls. Like we can't get enough girls into football. Like we struggle. We can't get girls to come to our events. Then we get a call a month later saying, Ray, you've just been to like New York or California, wherever you've been on your event, and we've missed it. And we try our hardest to get it out there, but that's one of the big things. And I think, if you could help us in any way to draw out more girls into the game, to pick up a copy of the book and read it, to actually say it as possible, it'd be a big help. And we'd love to help future ballers as well. Like, because it's intersinks.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, just talking today, it seems like we're on the same mission. Yeah. We're doing two different things, but they intertwine. So, I'd love to promote that. And that's the thing. Like, I don't just promote things I'm not passionate about. And I'm definitely very passionate about what you're doing. So yeah,
I'm seeing a female version of me sat across, but a lot younger than me. I'm 44. But we're meant to have another ad break, but we forgot to go to the ad break and we just kept going. But we're going to finish up now. But a big thank you for joining us. I know not just our families and female players will love this, the male players are going to love it again. But what's on next for you for the next couple of months and 6 months ahead? What have you got on?
Yeah, so before I did the Amazing Race Celebrity, which was pretty cool. So usually in football, you never get a window of opportunity to do something outside of football. So that was the first time I've ever put something above football. And, due to not going to the Olympics, I picked up a calf tear right before I went into national team camp, unfortunately. Luck is just not on my side. But through that, I realised, okay, Olympics isn't on. I went and got this operation, this cleanup that I desperately needed. And so now I'm in a rehab phase. Unfortunately, because of this operation, I'm not going to be able to take an overseas contract. Yeah. So I'll most likely stay in the league and keep trying to grow this league and promote this league. And then once I'm back on my feet, I'll definitely look to soar out of here and test myself at another level, because I feel like I'm going from strength to strength. And, it's hard when you say that when you're in a moment of injuries and rehabbing. But, every time I've had a setback, I get more and more fired up and realise that, no, I can get back in the green and gold. I can get another overseas contract, and I'm determined to do that. So I'm looking at the next 8 to 12 weeks before I can get back to playing football. I'll have a great season here and score a bunch of goals and hopefully get myself back in the national team. The goal for me, and it's important to voice it because it puts it in existence, is to be at that Asian Cup that's on home soil with the Matildas. So that is the goal, because, I've missed out on the World Cup and I'm going to miss out on this Olympics. So I've got a bitter taste in my mouth, and I've just got this burning desire to get back in there. One thing I've noticed is I haven't lost the passion to be, at the top through injury.
If I was to ask you quickly, your dream, obviously used to play in that Asia Cup for the Matildas, but your dream maybe to have one last stint in Europe, would it be England, would it be Spain, would it be France, where would you go? If you could pick anywhere, what league would it be?
It's a tough question.
If any club was saying, we'll all sign Emily, which club and where would it be?
It's crazy because my whole entire career, I've always thought about America. It's the one. It's the one you didn't. It's the one you didn't mention. Okay. And I had opportunities that I didn't quite. It never quite felt like the right time. But the reason I say America and not European football, one, I've done a lot of European football, and that's been unbelievable. But there's something about the American League that I think really suits me. It's fast, it's attacking, it's physical, and they just have a different mentality over there. And I'm not saying European football doesn't have that. Yeah. It just means it's one challenge I haven't undertook yet. And I just like ticking boxes. I like being thrown in the deep end. It's one thing that I think suits my playing style. Not to say I've ruled out Europe. I definitely haven't. It's just on my radar.
Yeah. I lived in the US for just over 4 years, and I seen it. And I seen the women's game in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, and it was phenomenal. And so, okay, we'll do you the deal. So, Matilda's Asia Cup, and we'll get you the contract in the women's MLS.
That's it.
We'll get you on the pro player pathway.
Let's do it.
A big thank you, Emily, for joining us. And a big thank you from everyone who's listening at the Raymond Wood podcast. And we'll be back next week with our next episode. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks for having me.